that night punched my ticket for kayak fishing.
It's time to get your ticket punched on episode 53, brought to you by reelsandtackle.com.
Welcome to the Telltale Fisherman podcast, where avid anglers share the story of their best fishing day ever to inspire yours. Now it's time for another epic adventure. So here's your host, John Woodson.
Okay, welcome to the show. Today's guest is coming to us from Mississippi, and his name is Colin McCain. Colin, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. It's nice to finally get on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you of all people, I think, have been sandbagging me the most, and finally nailed you down here.
Yeah, definitely. I apologize. I mean, yeah, honestly, it doesn't seem like a busy life, but when you kind of try to, get things going, it kind of does. A lot of my, a lot of things that I do, recreation or whatever, otherwise, other than vacations, are sort of kind of spur of the moment.
Yeah.
I just got back from the IFA tournament, and literally at 2 p.m. I decided to go ahead and register for it. So I got the kitchen pass to go register for it.
Yeah. Most importantly, you got the pass, and then you were able to get a pass to participate. So, well, cool. Yeah, I just saw. As a matter of fact, I was checking my Instagram today and saw that it looked like it was going to be a very tough day for that. So, yeah, kind of tell us what was going on weather-wise and when it ended up happening there.
Well, so the captain's meeting was at 6 p.m., 6 to 7 p.m. last night, and it was cold, windy, raining. I mean, it was just the worst conditions, but, I guess that front kind of came through, and it actually ended up being sunny today, but with that sun came winds of at least 20 sustained, at least, from the kind of west-northwest, and the area that I went, I don't get to fish Louisiana as much as I'd like, even though it's right next door. I kind of talked about it earlier about, family life and everything. It's just I don't get to fish it, so I don't really know the waters. And when one doesn't know the waters, I guess you sort of resort to going to Google Earth and, scanning forums, things of that nature.
Yep.
And you kind of just come up with a game plan and go for it. And I did, and I ended up going kind of across, it's called the Mr. Go. I don't know if you're familiar with that, the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet.
Okay.
And, it's an acronym for that. And it was pretty tough going. Going out, I generally, during, I kayak fish tournaments, by the way, but generally, I kind of like to make longer runs just to kind of get away from people.
Right.
And this one, I did that thinking, using Google Earth, I thought I found a pretty nice area. And when I do tournaments, I try to recreate what I have here on the coast. So here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, we have the Sound, and then we have Barrier Islands, 9 miles out. And the Sound kind of offers so we have, we don't get the pretty waters like maybe the Panhandle of Florida, Gulf Shores, Alabama. We just don't get those, but what we do get is a great environment for fish to breed and grow up, and we really have a very underrated fisheries here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And so I try to, when I go to Louisiana, et cetera, I try to recreate what I have here, because this is kind of what I know, and so I try to recreate it here. It doesn't always work. It didn't work today, and the majority of the time, actually, and I was really just fighting winds.
Yeah.
And then I was in some really thick grass. I don't know what I'm assuming, like a hydrilla type. It's just mats right under the water there, maybe 4 or 5 inches, and I use a pedal drive kayak. A Hobie, and it just, basically I was just paddling through this stuff. My pedal drive just wouldn't work well,
right,
in this stuff. And then with it being windy, you know, I was talking to some guys after the tournament, and with it being windy, it kind of takes away the sight casting aspect of it. So, you know, and I'm not very familiar with that. I know those guys in Louisiana, maybe even over in Florida, kind of do it a little bit, but I'm not. We just don't have that here in Mississippi. I mean, at least not maybe in the winter times, but even then, it's not as abundant as it is over there. They just, you know, they sort of pick a fish, they see it, they cast to it, and they catch it. You know, over here, it's a lot of, you know, I have to fish structure, a lot of blind casting. I have to do a little bit more work on my end in order to catch fish. And, you know, but, you know, I found clean water. I just, you know, when I see a fish, I mean, I'd be right up on it, and I just, you know, I couldn't really get anything today. So today for me, it was a really, really tough tournament, and even some of the guys who were coming in, I think some of the veteran guys who fish these a lot, I think they had a tough time as well.
I don't think anybody's unscathed when it's 20 knot winds and you're in a kayak. You're going to get beat for sure. Yeah. Luckily, I'm in you know, fairly decent shape. The long run coming back, what took me maybe 30 to 40 minutes to get to the area where I got took me almost 2 hours to get back. Wow.
So, yeah, it was pretty rough. I had you know, waves coming over the and with this Mississippi River Gulf outlet. I'm telling you, you know, if you're out in the Sound or something, or even, you know, in the Gulf, you can sort of time waves a little bit, or time, you know, the peaks and troughs. This was just very scattered, sort of choppy, very kind of sketchy waters. I mean, it really, really was. And I'm looking at my my depth finder, and you know, when I normally go 3-4, sometimes a little faster knots, I was only going 1, and I mean, I was struggling to do that.
Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Yeah. So I didn't get a lot of fishing time in. I mean, it was, you know, it was an experience. I feel like I'm seasoned enough to maybe go through maybe situations like that. I definitely don't want to do that, especially at any point, not just tournament time, but I've done it before. I prefer not to.
Yeah.
You know, you have to pick your days. Well, you don't get to pick your days during a tournament, but you have to pick your days, especially in a kayak, you know, when you go out fishing. Oh yeah.
No, it's tough under any circumstances when you've got wind like that in a kayak, no matter what you're doing. I mean, it's hard to anchor. You know, even if you stick the anchor stick in, sometimes it'll blow your kayak loose, and yeah, it could be a mess for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's tough, but I mean, you know, it's challenging. The sort of the competitor in me sort of enjoys that. I enjoy being outside, so you know, I just chalk it up to experience, and I really, you know, even though I didn't catch any fish today, I really, besides the fact of that sort of sketchy conditions, I really enjoyed it. I really did. I learned a little bit about the area, so maybe the next IFA tournament that's down there, I'll be able to sort of do better. So it's about learning also.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely. It's you got to get out there and grind it sometimes to figure those fish out and, you know, what they're doing in those tough conditions for sure. Well, I'd like to hear a little bit more about fishing in Mississippi there. I've, you know, talked to people who've redfished in South Carolina, in Georgia, and Florida, obviously, and Louisiana, of course, and Texas, but I don't think I've ever talked about you know, fishing for reds there in Mississippi. So you were telling me a little bit about what the conditions are like, but just kind of walk me through what your normal fishing areas are like and the types of baits you like to use, and you know, how you typically approach red fishing there.
Well, for me personally, I mean, you know, I think with everywhere, you know, soft plastics are you know, very effective. I think that's kind of anywhere. So we have the Mississippi Sound. We have about 80 miles of beachfront along the coast of Mississippi. And so when you go out, say if you do a beach launch, it stays pretty shallow in most areas unless you're launching maybe near a river's mouth, and it can kind of get deep, but it doesn't get deep maybe like in the panhandle of Florida where these guys go half a mile out and they're in 50, 60, 70 feet of water. You'll get 7, 8, 9, 10 foot of water, sometimes 10, 12, 15 in some areas. It just really depends, river bends, etc. But you're really fishing sort of shallow.
Okay.
So I typically don't use anything heavier than, say, an 1/8-ounce jig head. I love hard baits, so I fish a lot of top water. And sometimes I'll fish a top water all day. But what the difference between, I would say, Mississippian versus maybe a Louisiana, is that Louisiana has so much water, but they have pockets of water where these fish sort of congregate. And if you find that, and they call them ponds over there, if you could find those ponds, I think you might be able to be productive in catching, say, redfish. But here, it's all open water.
Okay.
For the most part. Yeah, it's all open water. So I think the fish are very structure oriented here as compared to maybe. And I say that, whether it's bridges or we have a lot of a pretty good artificial reef system here. So you can go out on these artificial reefs. A real popular one is called Katrina Reef, and that's some of the leftovers from the Biloxi Bridge that was kind of knocked down by Hurricane Katrina back in I think 05 or 06.
Yeah.
And so that's a very popular spot. You can catch nice speckled trout there. There are a lot of jetties. I like fishing jetties. I catch a lot of nice trout on the jetties too. So any areas like that where there's structure, where there's a harbor, where there's rocks, sort of that's kind of where I like going to fish. We do have some marshy areas, but not quite like. And again, I'm comparing it to Louisiana. I guess I just got back from there, so it's in the forefront of my mind. But,
yeah.
We do have some marsh, not quite like them, and I think our marshes are really affected by our river systems too. So we have heavy rains like we did yesterday. That kind of came through. It may not necessarily be a good day to go fish in those areas because the fresh water sort of takes over and the fishing might not be so good. I mean, you can probably find them, but it may not be as good as say if we go without rain for a couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, I know the specks, the speckled trout, at least around here, seem to be pretty put off by a big freshwater influx, and they'll kind of move out, and the bite will shut off for them after big rains and stuff. It seems like the redfish aren't quite as affected, near as I can tell, but I know it can definitely make a difference. Now, do you have sort of the inland shallow water areas? Like we have the on both coasts of Florida, there's the intercoastal waterways, so you can kind of go in from the ocean, and you're in where there's a boat canal that runs for miles and miles up and down, behind where the beach is, but you've got lots and lots of shallow water flats in there that aren't in the ocean proper. Do you have anything like that there in Mississippi, or is it all kind of open water?
Sort of. And I'm thinking you're referencing like Mosquito Lagoon or something like that.
Sarasota Bay. Yeah.
Yeah. So sort of, I guess, sort of in a way. But again, so for example, in Pascagoula, you have the east and western Pascagoula River, and I think that's the only river in the United States that hasn't really been dammed off or anything like that. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
But the Pascagoula River, kind of in between the east and western rivers, there is sort of a little, sort of a flat, mud flats area that stays relatively shallow. That can be pretty solid. If you're looking to fill a freezer, I think that's kind of the area to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger fish, especially speckled trout, sort of hang out sort of out front, and we call the beach area kind of out front,
Right.
And but you can, you could sometimes catch or I haven't caught. Put it this way, I've not caught any large specks kind of in those areas.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're there. I just haven't really gotten good enough to target them with any frequency, I guess. I've hooked into a few, but no real, just here and there. It's not a everyday thing kind of deal, or every trip thing. So
now the flip side of fishing out front, I think, as you called it, when you're kind of in the ocean, is that you can catch other species. Sometimes there's some surprises. Do you get those up there, like a cobia that swims in, or mackerel or other kind of stuff like that? Sometimes that you catch when you're out fishing for reds and trout.
I think Spanish mackerel are pretty common here. Sometimes the triple tail can kind of come in into the sound, and I hear guys kind of fishing the crab pots or pilings that are kind of in the sound there. I've not heard a cobia coming in this close. I'm not sure. I have seen, we've taken a sailboat out to one of the islands several years back, and I saw a very large tarpon jump out of the water. We do have tarpon here. From my understanding, back in the heyday, Biloxi, which is kind of the sister city to where I'm from in Gulfport, it was kind of touted as the tarpon capital of the world.
Really?
Now that's a local thing. I don't know how true that is, and definitely there's some stories about hey, the Rat Pack used to hang out down here, and Al Capone had a house in Ocean Springs, and and they used to fish all the time. I don't know.
Right, right.
But I've never caught a tarpon. That's one of the. If I catch a tarpon, I went down to the Keys probably about 10 years ago, and we were fishing in Key Largo, and I got to fish with Captain Leon Davis. He passed away several years ago, but apparently he was like a local legend down there. But I was hoping to catch a tarpon or a bonefish or both, and didn't get the chance. So they were kind of stuck up, I guess, putting the bait right in front of them, and they weren't taking it. So my first tarpon, I really want it to be from Mississippi waters, if possible. So hopefully that's kind of what I'm looking for. Maybe once the summer kind of rolls around. I think I kind of hooked into one a little while back, but I'm not sure because I didn't see it. It was a very odd bite, and it was a very heavy fish. It was like he took it and he spit it out, and that was it. And I kept on getting that same bite, and I'd never had that bite before. It could have been just a normal, maybe black drum. I don't know, but I was hoping it was that. It was deep in the summertime at night, hearing a lot of splashing. I don't know if they do that. I did go to I think it's Crystal River, Florida. Yep. And I saw them at the mouth. My buddy and I took a little kayak fishing trip out there, and we saw a lot of, I'd say 20 to 24 inch tarpon, and we just couldn't get them to eat. The water's so clear over there, and at the mouth of that, and at that time it was just so clean, and really just couldn't put a bait on them and have them take it. So first tarpon, I hope it's from Mississippi. We do have cobia offshore, red snapper. I think we even have the little rock lobsters or whatever hanging out at the rigs. I don't get to go out that far all that often. In fact, it's been probably since I was a teenager since I've gone deep sea fishing locally. I've done some in Florida, but locally, no. It's been a long time. So.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got plenty of stuff to chase inshore there. And you mentioned Crystal River. I was trying to kind of compare the area you're describing to what we have here in Florida that I've seen, and that was the closest comparison I had in my mind, that it was probably more like Crystal River where you fish, if you made a comparison.
Yeah, we don't have clean water, again, and that's unless you go to the islands. The islands, it's very much like, Panhandle of Florida, Pensacola and Destin in that area. Maybe not quite as clean, but pretty darn close at times. But and every once in a while, during the winters, our waters can get fairly clean, but nowhere there's still that kind of tannin colored undertone, if you will. It's always kind of brown, and we have a few different rivers that kind of flow through, and I guess they kind of add to that. So.
I know you've got some redfish there somewhere, and I have a feeling that when we get back, you're going to share a epic redfish story with us. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back. If you ever go fishing by yourself, it adds a little bit extra challenge to get the boat on and off the trailer. A boat launch cord makes launching much easier, so you can get on the water quicker and without damaging your boat. Go to tell.fish/gear in your web browser and check out the boat launch cord that we like the best. Okay, we are back with Colin McCain, and he is our first guest on the show from Mississippi. So it's been awesome talking with him and just kind of learning about that area and trying to get a visual for it. If there's redfish there, I'm sure it is an awesome place to fish, and I've seen some awesome pictures that Colin has shared on his Instagram over this past, year or so. We've been doing the show. And so I'm very excited to hear about one of your epic redfish adventures. So tell me where you're fishing and, what happened that day.
All right. So this is when I basically kind of first got into kayak fishing, probably my first summer. And I went out with a friend, and this was when I was still paddling. And we kind of went to a local area called, it's I guess colloquially known as Potash, but I think the correct name is Portage. And so we were fishing in Potash, and we had a good day. I mean, it was summertime. I think it was a Friday evening, and I got to get away for a few hours, and he and I kind of went out and had a good day. I think we both caught slams, decent reds, and the Gulf Coast slam is a red speckled trout, or at least here red speckled trout, and flounder. So I think we both caught those. And the sun was kind of coming down, and it was actually getting kind of late. I think it was around 8:30ish, and the sun was still up actually, at least out in the horizon, going under the Bay St. Louis Bridge, which is a beautiful sight. And so we're just kind of chit chatting, and it was a very calm evening, and wind wasn't blowing, the gnats weren't out, so it was actually a really great evening. And so we were about to paddle in, and we start making our paddle back in, which we probably had about half a mile or so, and maybe a little longer. But we hear what sounds in the background, sort of like a baseball bat hitting the water, just a bam, and we kind of look over, and we see these finger-sized mullets sort of jumping a school of maybe 10, 15 yards. And so it's kind of like, okay, well we'll go ahead and maybe find out what's hitting those. And my friend sort of he sort of blocked me a little bit, and he goes, well, I'm going to fish behind the school. And I go, really? You're going to fish behind? I'm like, all right, I guess I'll fish in front of the school. So so I kind of paddle up kind of to where I think the front of the school is, and just casting, making a few casts. The sun's going down, and the sun is almost gone. And I mean, we're not getting any bites. So this is probably 5-10 minutes of trying to follow the school around. And I'm about to switch baits. I want to find out what's going on and what kind of fish this is. And I'm about to switch baits, and that baseball bat hits the water again about 10 yards away from my kayak, and I just flipped my bait over to it. And I just kind of bumped once, and it just shot off. I mean, he took the bait, and it went left, it went right, and I only used 12-pound test on most of my gear.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Because I'm mainly a speckled trout fisherman at heart, but but I do target redfish too. But and I can pull redfish in with 12-pound test. But this one sort of takes off, and then she turns around, heading out into the bay. And this area that heads out into it's the Bay of St. Louis, and so it starts to head out there, and I don't see this fish for maybe half an hour. I don't even know what it is. And it just keeps pulling. It pulls me and my buddy who's holding on to the back of my kayak.
So you got a anchor.
Yeah. So she's pulling both of us.
Wow.
And finally the moon comes up. It's around 9:15. Big bright full moon. And I see this huge hump. And we figured it was a redfish, but it was so bronze, it was so red, I guess, that you could actually see it in the sunlight. It had this real deep crimson color in the moonlight.
Moonlight, yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So, I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to just get this thing in, take a few quick picks, get it out.
Yeah.
Finally, I'm fighting, and every time I get it pretty close to the kayak, it just take off. And of course, I have to have my drag set because I'm only using 12-pound test. And it was really a tough it was probably the toughest battle I've had out of a kayak fighting a fish. But so finally, I think she's kind of going belly up, and I grab her gill plates to try to pull her up, and I'm so tired that this is an hour now. It took me an hour to get this fish in. And it pulled me and my buddy, I suspected, a half to 3/4 of a mile out into the bay. And so I go to pull it up, and I immediately put it back down in the water because my arms are jelly. I mean, I couldn't lift this fish. And finally, my buddy comes around to the side, and he helps me with this fish, and I pull it on top of me. And she's, her head's in my chest, and the tail's on my foot, and I'm just kind of holding this fish. And so I'm like, oh my God, and of course I'm elated, and I give Derek my camera, and I go, all right, man, let's take a few quick pics. And some of them didn't come out; they're kind of goofy looking, but he takes a few, and I get her back in the water. And I would think after an hour of fighting, this fish would be a little tired and
pretty whooped, yeah.
Right when I put her in the water, she just immediately, she was still spry. She just took off, and that made me kind of happy because after that epic fight, it was just I didn't want to accidentally or tire her out and maybe even kill the fish for just the great fight that she gave. So that was that's pretty much it. I mean, it was the largest redfish I've ever caught, a kayak, boat, or otherwise. And I don't know how much it weighed. I'm not too big on putting the grips on and weighing fish. So and I don't think I could have lifted this fish anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like you could barely lift your arms.
Yeah. So and then of course, to add insult to injury, we have to paddle back, and you're using your arms. But yeah, I mean, I really don't know how long this fish was. It was just a really, really stud bull redfish. It was definitely in the bull category for sure. And she had a beautiful color, beautiful redfish. And I noticed that about our redfish here too. They're gorgeous. I mean, we have really, really pretty redfish down here in Mississippi, and they eat well too. And this one definitely didn't miss any lines in the buffet for sure.
And didn't miss your lure either, thankfully.
No, not at all. Yeah, it was. And again, it was. I'll never forget that one. And I think that one right there is the one that kind of got me sort of hooked into kayak fishing.
Oh yeah.
Kayak fishing is quiet. It's it's very relaxing. But what I like about kayak fishing over say boat fishing is that say if you go out with a buddy, you can if your buddy wants to kind of go off and go somewhere else, well, he can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the boat, you kind of have to go where the boat captain wants to go, and that may not be where you necessarily want to go. But I mean, there's pros and cons. I mean, versus boats versus kayaks. I mean, the boats you can run a long distance.
Right.
But in a kayak, you're kind of limited as to what your body can do. So if you have to make a long run like I did today, in some really nasty conditions, if you're not in decent shape, and I think it's actually helped me get in good shape. If you're not in decent shape, you don't make that run, or you don't. Maybe you're calling DMR or Coast Guard or something.
Yeah, that sounds like my exit strategy.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there where I'll look back at my buddy and I'm like, hey, do you want to call in? And he's like, heck no, let's do it. All right, let's go. So.
Yeah, anytime you can catch a bull redfish, it's special. But in the moonlight like that, and after you already had an awesome day and bagged a slam, man, that just must have been one special day on the water for sure.
It really, really was. And like I said, I think that night punched my ticket for kayak fishing for sure.
No kidding. Well, Colin, you and some of our other guests, Pam, we've had on a while ago. You kayak tournament fishers have got me intrigued by this, and who knows, maybe we'll get to meet up in a IFA kayak tournament one day if I ever get my kitchen pass to go do one.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be great. I think as far as recreation is concerned, I think kayak fishing is actually one of the. I think it's the fastest growing recreational sport out there, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've read that somewhere, but I could be wrong. So.
Oh yeah, I mean the number of kayaks I see out, and just not only that you see on the water, but all the new ones that are coming out and the different brands. Yeah, I mean, definitely it's gaining in popularity, certainly around Florida, from what I've observed. So
yeah, definitely I think everywhere along the coastlines, and the price point makes sense for a lot of people, and there's just really relatively little maintenance, and you could do just about anything to a kayak, and that's maybe similar to a boat. You add electronics or whatever, but I mean, it's just. I don't know. There's something to it for sure, and I enjoy it, and I know a lot of people who do, and for some people who may not be familiar with it, I mean, there are a lot of local kayak shops that will let you test them out for free, and a lot of people like myself, I have too, and I've taken several people out who have never even been in a kayak, and just take them out kayak fishing, and they love it, and they end up buying a kayak. So it's I really like that. So.
All right, well, Colin, it's so good to finally get to talk with you, and I'm pretty sure it won't be the last time we talk. And have a lot of fun communicating with you over the past couple months. But really great to hear your epic story, and just appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely.
Be sure to check us out on Instagram where you can scroll back through our prior posts to see the spectacular catches that our amazing guests are hauling in. And be sure to hit the follow button so you don't miss the new catches that are right around the corner. Our handle is @TelltaleFisherman.
This has been the Telltale Fisherman podcast. Thanks for sharing another great tale with us. Be sure to check out the show notes page for more info on today's show and the gear we talked about. Keep those lines tight, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Telltale Fisherman podcast.